Welcome to our deep dive into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, yeah, this one.
It's a book.
It's a powerful book.
It really is.
Yeah.
It takes us on a journey into the heart of the human spirit. And we have your notes and highlights ready to go so we can uncover some incredible insights together.
You know, it's such a powerful story because Frankl wasn't just observing these horrors of the Nazi camps he was imprisoned in.
Right.
He was also a psychiatrist analyzing the psychological impact of these experiences.
Exactly. His own experiences, along with those of his fellow prisoners, became the foundation for his theory of logotherapy. The idea that the search for meaning is our primary drive, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. So are you ready to get into some of Frankl's observations about life inside the camps?
Absolutely, and I think you'll find his insights are incredibly relevant, even though thankfully most of us will never experience anything close to what he went through.
Yeah. Okay, so let's transport ourselves back to 1942. Frankl has just arrived at Auschwitz after days crammed in a cattle car. What does he encounter that sets the stage for everything that follows?
Well, the moment he steps off the train, he's thrust into this brutal selection process, what he calls the finger game.
Oh, wow.
SS officers would decide the fate of each prisoner with a simple gesture, left or right.
Left for the gas chambers,
Right.
right for a chance at survival, at least for a little while longer.
Right.
It's almost impossible to fathom the terror of that moment.
Oh, absolutely. And you
Yeah.
know what's fascinating here is that the selection process wasn't just about physical extermination.
Right.
It was also about stripping away the prisoners' identities, their humanity.
Wow.
They were reduced to numbers, their possessions were taken, their heads were shaved, their clothes replaced with rags. Frankl even talks about throwing away a manuscript that he'd been working on,
Oh, wow.
symbolizing the loss of his entire former life.
That must have been so symbolic for him as a scientist, as a scholar. To just discard years of work. It really underscores the feeling of being utterly stripped bare.
Exactly. It was a deliberate attempt to break their spirits, to make them feel like nothing more than animals.
And yet, Frankl doesn't just recount these horrors. He also analyzes the psychological impact of the camps on himself and on others. And he describes these three distinct phases that prisoners went through, right?
Yes, and these phases offer a window into how the human mind copes with extreme trauma. You might be surprised to know that the initial response isn't always despair. Frankl observed that many, including himself, went through a phase of shock and denial.
It's like the mind's way of protecting itself from this overwhelming reality.
Exactly. Frankl even recounts almost smiling when a friend warned him about being selected for the gas chambers. It's this strange emotional detachment, a refusal to believe that things are as bad as they seem.
I could see that. He also talks about the SS tricking prisoners into handing over their valuables, playing on that initial denial, making promises that they had no intention of keeping.
Exactly. It highlights just how hard it was for people to grasp the situation, to accept that they were entering a world where the normal rules no longer applied. But this denial couldn't last forever.
Right, so eventually that shock wears off and a different kind of coping mechanism takes over. What did Frankl call this second phase?
He calls it apathy, a kind of emotional death. The constant threat of death, the horrific conditions, the lack of privacy, it all led to this chilling numbness.
There's a passage where he talks about the loss of normal reactions, this focus on mere survival. He even mentions a loss of sexual drive and this idea of cultural hibernation, where the only things people talked about were politics and religion.
Can you imagine being in a situation where you have to shut down so much of your humanity just to survive?
Yeah.
It speaks to the incredible psychological toll that the camps took on the prisoners. Any display of emotion could be dangerous, could attract unwanted attention.
It's so disturbing to think about. He shares an anecdote about being on a train with other Vietnamese prisoners passing through his hometown.
Yeah.
And when Frankl asks if he can just see his childhood home through the window, he's met with indifference, even annoyance.
It shows how this emotional blunting, this apathy, could even erode empathy and compassion.
So we have shock and denial, followed by emotional numbness. What happens in the third phase after liberation?
This phase is perhaps the most surprising to many.
Okay.
It's not just pure relief and joy.
Yeah.
It's actually a period of depersonalization and disillusionment. It's like the mind can't quite catch up to the sudden shift in reality.
So even liberation has its own set of challenges.
Absolutely. Think about it. You've been living under incredible pressure, both physically and mentally, for years. Suddenly, that pressure is released.
Yeah,
But your mind and body haven't caught up yet. Frankl even compares it to the bends, like a diver surfacing too quickly.
that's a powerful analogy. It underscores the idea that the trauma doesn't just disappear overnight.
Exactly. He talks about not feeling joy at the sight of flowers,
Yeah.
but being deeply moved by the colorful tail feathers of a rooster. It's as if these small details pierce through the fog of depersonalization more easily than something grand, like a field of flowers.
It's a reminder that healing and reintegration are ongoing processes,
Mm.
even after the immediate danger is gone. He also mentioned struggles with bitterness, disillusionment, and the difficulty of adjusting back to normal life.
Many survivors faced indifference from those who couldn't comprehend what they'd been through.
Oh, wow.
Imagine surviving such an ordeal only to be met with platitudes like, "We didn't know," or "We suffered too." It created a gulf between their experiences and the world they returned to.
So it's clear that the psychological impact of the camps was profound and multi-layered. But amidst all this suffering, Frankl also discovered something extraordinary: the power of meaning, even in the darkest of places.
And that's what we'll explore next, Frankl's theory of logotherapy,
Yeah,
and how even in Auschwitz, he and others found moments of grace, resilience, and even humor.
that's incredible. All right, well, let's take a quick break,
Okay.
and we'll come back and discuss that right after this.
It's hard to imagine, finding humor in a concentration camp. Yet Frankl highlights it as a key element of survival.
Yeah, I know. It almost feels wrong to even think about laughter in such a horrific context. How did humor help the prisoners cope?
Well, Frankl describes humor as a defense mechanism, a way to momentarily rise above the suffering. He even encouraged his fellow prisoners to practice finding humor in the darkest of situations.
Do you have any examples of the type of humor they found?
Well, Frankl writes about how he and a surgeon friend would invent stories about their lives after liberation,
Mhm.
and they'd imagine the surgeon so used to the camp foreman yelling, "Action! Action!" accidentally saying the same thing in the operating room.
Wow, that is dark humor.
Yeah.
But I can see how it might have helped them momentarily escape their reality.
Exactly. It offered a brief respite, a way to assert their humanity in a place that was trying to strip it away. It was a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, the human spirit can find ways to resist, to find light in the darkness.
You know, it's fascinating how Frankl also observed moments of grace and selflessness amongst the prisoners. It would have been easy to become completely self-absorbed, focused only on survival.
You're absolutely right. But Frankl noticed that even in those dire circumstances, many prisoners chose compassion. He talks about those who shared their last piece of bread, comforted others, or risked their own safety to help a fellow inmate.
Yeah, it's inspiring, isn't it? Even when they had so little, they were willing to give to others.
These acts of kindness, these defiant acts of humanity, it challenged the Nazis' attempts to dehumanize them. It showed that even in the depths of despair, the human spirit could choose love over hate, compassion over selfishness.
Frankl didn't shy away from suffering. He even had a unique perspective on its nature. He talks about suffering the soul, like gas fills a chamber, regardless of the size of the suffer. What do you think he meant by that?
He's highlighting the relativity of suffering. He's saying that we each experience suffering in our own way, and what might seem insignificant to one person can be overwhelming to another. His point is that even small comforts can take on immense significance in the right context.
That makes sense. He shares these powerful anecdotes about the overwhelming joy prisoners felt when their train didn't go in Althausen, a camp notorious for its brutality.
Or discovering that a newly arrived camp had no gas chamber.
Yeah.
These seemingly minor details became beacons of hope in a world where hope was scarce.
You know, those stories make me think about how we perceive our own challenges.
Yeah.
We might get caught up in feeling like our problems are the biggest, but in reality, everyone is facing something difficult.
And that's a key takeaway from Frankl's work. We have the power to choose our attitude even in the face of unavoidable suffering.
Right.
It's not about denying the pain, but about finding ways to rise above it, to find meaning in our response.
He even argues that it's not about asking, why me, but rather, what is life asking of me? That's such a profound shift in perspective.
Instead of seeing ourselves as victims, we can choose to see ourselves as active participants in our own lives, even in the face of suffering. This leads us to the heart of Frankl's theory of logotherapy, the search for meaning as our primary drive.
So, from the stories we've discussed so far, it seems like Frankl found meaning in helping others. But is that the only path?
Not at all. For Frankl, meaning could be found in many forms. One day, while marching to work in excruciating pain, he had a life-altering realization about the power of love.
He was visualizing his wife, right?
Yes. He realized in that moment that love transcends physical boundaries, that even though he was separated from her, his love for her was a source of strength and meaning. It was the ultimate goal, the strongest connection to life itself.
He uses that beautiful metaphor of angels lost in perpetual contemplation to describe the transcendent power of love.
It's a reminder that even amidst suffering, even when everything else is stripped away, love remains. Love for a partner, a child, a friend, a cause. It can sustain us, give us purpose, and remind us of our shared humanity.
That's such a powerful message. It shifts our focus outward, reminding us that meaning can be found in connection with something greater than ourselves.
Exactly. But what about the other side of this equation, the guards who inflicted so much pain?
It's hard to even fathom the mindset of someone who could participate in those atrocities. Did Frankl offer any insights into their psychology?
He does, and it's fascinating because he avoids generalizations. He doesn't demonize all the guards or claim they were all inherently evil.
That's surprising. I would have expected him to be completely unforgiving.
He does acknowledge the cruelty, but he also points out that the selection process for guards often favored the most brutal individuals. It was a system designed to reward those who were willing to dehumanize others.
So the environment itself played a role in shaping their behavior.
Absolutely. And while Frankl doesn't excuse their actions, he highlights a crucial point. The concentration camp experience revealed the potential for both good and evil that exists within all of us. It's a chilling reminder that anyone is capable of great cruelty under the right circumstances.
It makes you wonder how any of us would react in such a morally challenging situation. What choices would we make if faced with those impossible dilemmas?
It's a question that Frankl forces us to confront. While most of us will never experience anything remotely close to the horrors of the camps, we can all benefit from reflecting on our own capacity for both compassion and cruelty.
Frankl's observations about the psychology of the prisoners after liberation are also incredibly insightful. You mentioned earlier that the third phase wasn't just about relief and joy,
Right.
that there was also a lot of difficulty adapting back to life outside the camps.
Exactly. Many prisoners experienced a sense of depersonalization,
Yeah.
feeling like everything was unreal, like a dream.
He talks about walking through fields of flowers but feeling numb, unable to experience the beauty.
It's like the trauma had created a disconnect between their minds and their emotions. It took time for them to process the enormity of what they'd been through and to reconnect with the world around them.
And on top of that, many faced indifference, judgment, and even accusations from those who couldn't or wouldn't understand their experiences.
Imagine surviving those horrors only to be told, get over it, or everyone suffered during the war. It was like their suffering wasn't valid, wasn't acknowledged.
It's a tragic reminder that sometimes the greatest wounds are the ones that are invisible.
And tragically, some prisoners who had clung to the hope of reunion with loved ones
Right.
discovered that those they held dear were gone.
The thought of enduring all that, only to find that the people who gave you strength and hope were no longer there. It's heartbreaking.
It underscores the long-lasting impact of trauma and the importance of understanding and supporting survivors.
But even with all these challenges, Frankl's message is ultimately one of hope, right? He didn't want his experiences to just be a testament to human suffering. He wanted to find meaning, to offer something positive to the world.
That's right. Man's Search for Meaning isn't just a memoir of suffering, it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It's a roadmap to finding meaning in a world that often feels meaningless.
And it's not just relevant for those who have experienced extreme trauma, is it?
Absolutely not. Frankl's message is universal. It's about finding your why in life. What gives you purpose? What helps you get out of bed in the morning? It's about recognizing that even in the face of everyday challenges, we have the power to choose our attitude and find meaning in our experiences.
So in a way, Man's Search for Meaning is a call to action.
Yes.
It's not enough to just read about Frankl's experiences. We have to find ways to apply his insights to our own lives. And I think that's where logotherapy comes in.
Exactly. Logotherapy provides a practical framework for finding meaning. And that's what we'll delve into in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, so we've explored the depths of human suffering with Frankl.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a journey. But now let's dive into his solution. Logotherapy.
Yeah.
It's not just a theory.
Right.
It's a practical approach to finding meaning in life, even when faced with challenges.
What I find so fascinating about logotherapy is that it doesn't offer a one-size-fits-all answer. It's not about telling people what their meaning should be.
Yeah.
Instead, it provides a framework for discovering your own unique meaning, something that resonates deeply with you.
So it's more like a compass than a map.
Exactly.
It points you in the right direction,
Right.
but it doesn't dictate the specific path.
And Frankl emphasizes that meaning is individual and it's dynamic. It can change and evolve as we grow and as our circumstances change.
He introduces this term, new dynamics.
Yes.
Which sounds kind of intimidating, but it's actually a pretty simple concept once you break it down.
Oh, yeah?
Can you explain it in a way that makes sense for everyday life?
Well, think of it like this. Our mental well-being thrives on a healthy tension. New dynamics is about the tension between what we are now and our potential, who we can become.
Right.
It's that striving towards a goal, towards fulfilling a meaning that gives us a sense of purpose and direction.
So it's not about achieving some perfect state of balance or
Right.
happiness.
No.
It's about embracing the journey,
Right.
the challenges, the constant growth. I can see how that resonates with Frankl's experiences in the camps. The prisoners who found meaning, even in those horrific circumstances, were the ones who continued to strive
Yeah.
to find purpose in their actions.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's not about seeking a tension-free existence. It's about finding meaning in that tension, in the pursuit of something larger than ourselves.
Frankl also talks about this existential vacuum,
Yes,
this
that's-
feeling of emptiness and lack of meaning that many people struggle with, especially in modern society.
Yeah.
What are the roots of this existential vacuum?
Well, Frankl believed it stems from a loss of traditional values and instincts. In the past, society provided clearer guidelines for how to live and what to strive for.
Yeah.
But in today's world, with so much freedom and choice, it's easier to feel lost, like we're adrift in a sea of possibilities.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling. We have all this freedom, but sometimes it feels like we've lost sight of what truly matters.
And that's where logotherapy comes in. It's about actively seeking out meaning,
Right.
creating it through our choices and actions.
So how do we go about doing that? How do we find meaning in our lives? Frankl mentions 3 specific pathways.
He does. He talks about finding meaning through creative work,
Okay.
through experiencing love and beauty, and even through our attitude towards unavoidable suffering.
I'm intrigued by the idea of finding meaning through suffering. It seems so counterintuitive, but considering what Frankl went through, it makes sense that he would have some
insights on this. Can you elaborate?
Yeah.
Mm.
Sure. It's not about seeking out suffering, of course,
Right.
but Frankl argues that suffering is an inevitable part of life.
Right.
And rather than trying to avoid it, we can find meaning in how we respond to it. Think about those prisoners who found ways to help others, to comfort them, to share their meager rations. Those acts of kindness, of defiance against despair, were profound expressions of meaning.
It's about choosing our attitude, even in the face of pain, and finding ways to turn suffering into something positive, something that helps us grow.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even in the darkest of times, we still have the freedom to choose how we respond.
Frankl also highlights the importance of taking responsibility for our own lives and finding our own meaning.
Right.
It's not something that can be given to us.
Right.
It's something we have to actively create.
Yes, he challenges us to stop asking, what is the meaning of life?
Right.
And instead ask, what is the meaning of my life?
That shift in perspective is so powerful. It takes the pressure off finding some universal, absolute meaning and empowers us to create our own individual purpose.
And that leads us to the question that Frankl leaves us with, the question that lies at the heart of logotherapy. What will your contribution be? What meaning will you create in the world?
That's such a powerful question to reflect on. It reminds us that we all have a unique role to play, a unique contribution to make, and finding that contribution, that purpose, is ultimately what gives life meaning.
Frankl's journey through the depths of human suffering ultimately led him to a message of hope, a belief in the enduring power of the human spirit to find meaning, even in the face of unimaginable adversity.
His book, Man's Search for Meaning, is a testament to that belief. It's a reminder that we all have the capacity for greatness, for kindness, for love, and for creating meaning in a world that often feels meaningless.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Frankl's work, I encourage you to reflect on his message. What resonates most with you? What are some seemingly insignificant things in your life that might hold a deeper meaning if you viewed them through Frankl's lens?
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of man's search for meaning. We hope Frankl's insights inspire you to find your own unique spark of meaning in the world and to live a life that is rich with purpose. Until next time, Keep searching, keep growing, and keep sharing your light with the world.